Can life exist without the Force? What was Kreia's goal? Can the Force be killed? If Kreia had succeeded, would people die? Kreia is often cited as being one of, if not the most complex character the Star Wars universe has ever seen. The main negative aspect of that title is that she's often misunderstood. I've made many videos analyzing and discussing this character. I'm sure there's many people who would say that I don't understand her at all. Consider what I'm about to say as a theory of mine if you want. But let's talk about Kreia's goal regarding the Force.
It is said that the Force has a will. It has a destiny for us all. I wield it, but it uses us all, and that is abhorrent to me, because I hate the Force. I hate that it seems to have a will, that it would control us to achieve some measure of balance when countless lives are lost.
The belief that persists is that Kreia wanted to kill the Force. This is untrue. Kreia wanted to remove the Force's influence. Kreia's disillusionment with the Force also comes with great understanding of it. They tried to make her powerless, and now she's going to take power away from the Force itself. The Force's power comes from its ability to manipulate. That's exactly what is taken away when someone is deafened to it, a la the Jedi Exile.
We did not cut you off from the Force. You were merely deafened to it, because of that last battle of the Mandalorian Wars.
The Jedi Exile could live her life and make her decisions without the influence of the Force. That's what Kreia wanted for all living beings, the Force having no more impact over anyone or anything. You can argue that this would be to effectively kill the Force, but you can't deny the distinction.
But in you, I see the potential to see the Force die, to turn away from its will, and that is what pleases me. You are beautiful to me, Exile. A dead spot in the Force, an emptiness in which its will might be denied.
People also say that life cannot exist without the Force. This is questionable.
Much can be achieved without the Force, as you know. Life continues, persists, and may be helped or harmed as a result.
The prevailing idea is also that the Force cannot be killed. This is also technically untrue.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it binds the galaxy together.
There is a method to destroy the Force, and that method has a name. Life creates the Force. If all life is eradicated, then the Force cannot exist. If you want the Star Wars universe to come to an end, then you should want Darth Nihilus to have his way. But of course, Kreia has the presence of mind to understand how hollow such an achievement would be.
Do you think I seek the death of all living things? There is no victory in such things.
Even with Kreia's plan being understood, there's still one point of contention. What outstanding effect would this have? Will it result in people dying? The short answer is yes, but probably not in the way that you think. I've made many videos. I've explored almost every inch of Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. I can say that I have an above average understanding of the Star Wars universe and its mechanics. I say all that because of the following. I'm not sure there's much evidence to suggest that Kreia's plan would have directly resulted in people dying. A few can, but it's very situational. I've identified 3 key aspects of KoTOR 2 that people use to reach that conclusion. The first one concerns Darth Nihilus.
It is a technique that is almost as old as the Sith themselves. It is a means of severing connections between life, the Force, and feeding upon the death it causes. As much as one may use the Force to bolster the wills and strengths of others, the reverse is possible, though not often used. Instead of sending one's will through connections in the Force, instead such connections are drawn upon, fed upon, and drained completely.
People sometimes point at Nihilus and his ability as evidence that Kreia's plan will result in mass death, because Kreia wants to take the Force away from people. But when Nihilus does that by feeding on it, they die. Well, let's analyze this a bit. What exactly is the Force between living beings? It's interconnected life energy, like Obi-Wan explains. An energy field created by all living things that binds us together. A Jedi taps into those connections between life to project their power. Darth Nihilus does the opposite. Instead of projecting, he retracts, drawing the interconnected life energy towards and into himself. Obviously, without their life energy, the victims do not survive. This is not what Kreia is doing. Her plan to deafen people to the Force doesn't rely on any ability that projects or draws power from the connections in the Force, just the connections themselves. And the question remains if life can exist without the Force completely, without people's life energy being interconnected. It's not like people can't make connections without the Force. In the Star Wars universe itself, the Jedi Exile is a prime example of that.
There's a greatness in you. A greatness that does not stem from the Force. It stems from who you are.
Even if we grant that life can't exist without the Force, Kreia's plan doesn't remove the Force. That's not what deafening means. The Force would still be screaming into your ears, but you wouldn't be able to hear it.
You lost your connection to the Force. It was that final battle, the deaths of so many Jedi, that caused you to lose your connection. It caused the wound that you feel now. It caused pain in the Force, an emptiness, a wound that has yet to heal.
You could say that the Jedi Exile experienced being deafened to the Force, and it almost killed them. But we have to remember that it wasn't the deafening that almost killed them. That was a means of survival. The Exile forms Force bonds very easily, and the army of people they bonded with were all dying all at once.
Surely you are familiar with Force bonds. It is the bond that develops between apprentice and master when one truly understands another. It is developed over time through understanding of each other. Yet you do it so easily, and we do not know why.
The screams of countless thousands, Jedi and Mandalorians, crushed by the planet's gravity, annihilated.
To hear the Force over such pain, it is not possible. It was too much for any Jedi to endure. And it is a wonder that you did not die there when thousands perished, all those you had fought with and struggled with. You cut yourself off because you had to if you were to survive.
Deafened to the Force, the Exile didn't die. In fact, no one has ever died from being cut off from the Force in some way. Not the Exile, not Kreia, not Ula Kaldroma. They all lived on. But there is the assumption that someone cut off from the Force would eventually die. They won't be able to adapt and survive without the Force when they've lived their entire lives with it. Sion and Nihilus cut Kreia off from the Force and left her alive because they made the same assumption. They couldn't fathom surviving if it happened to them. And the same can be said of Atris.
There are places in the galaxy dead to the Force where nothing lives, where the echoes travel forever and do not reach their destination. And these places may be created, even from the simplest of events, the slightest of motions. One person, at the right place, at the right time, can change the face of the galaxy, or end it.
It's reasonable for people to hear this quote and interpret it a certain way. But does an absence of the Force also mean an absence of life? Or does an absence of life mean the absence of the Force? We've established before that the Force cannot exist if there is no life. The activation of the mass shadow generator made exactly that a reality for Malachor 5. Mass death created a wound in the Force, a place dead to the Force.
You are an echo in the Force, a hollow space where it has been wounded. It takes a great act of destruction to create such emptiness, but it can be done. It creates places where the Force is difficult to hear and difficult to find one's way, and you carry it with you, always.
Atris was speaking about the Exile in that sentence, but we all know that locations can be dead in the Force too, not just people.
This pain I describe, the echo of these acts, is true of planets as well. Tremendous loss of life on a planetary scale can also cast echoes, create a scream, a wound in the Force that can travel across the galaxy.
Now she seeks to create another echo, a wound in the Force, greater than the one before, greater than the one you caused. It will deafen all touched by the Force until no life is left. You were strong enough to withstand it once, but few have your strength in such matters, especially if they are unprepared.
In that clip, I think Atris is just wrong. It wouldn't be the first time she was wrong about something due to her own way of thinking. But feel free to correct me in the comments section if you think I am. I mentioned before how various Force users have been deafened or somehow cut off from the Force, and physically they were fine. So when Atris is talking about withstanding something and needing strength and being unprepared, she's referring to the wound, not the deafening. Atris still thinks like a Jedi or a Sith, because she's still wrong about the effects it will have. She thinks that if the galaxy is deaf to the Force, then the entire galaxy dies. Having sufficient strength and being prepared for this incoming wound in the Force would help, but it's not going to happen in the way that she thinks, in the way that I think many people assume. Like I said near the beginning of this video, if Kreia's plan succeeded, people would die. The moment Kreia kills the Exile in the heart of Malachor 5, it's not going to send out some sort of psychic shockwave, deafening all it touches to the Force. That has never been Kreia's MO.
To create places in the Force where it is difficult to center oneself, but that is the crudest form of manipulation.
How many people even know about what could have happened on Malachor 5? Everyone who was there and Atris? On the surface, it seems like a small, insignificant thing. An ex-Jedi dying on Malachor, so what? But Kreia is so powerful in manipulation that she's orchestrated her most subtle and complex act ever conceived.
It is possible to affect those connections in other ways, by the slightest action. A seemingly minor choice, a small cruelty. The stronger your connection to life, to the Force, the stronger these echoes can be made, and the stronger they are felt.
This one little act will set into motion events that will eventually and inevitably deafen the entire galaxy to the Force. A foundation needed to be laid in order for this to work. Atris said that Kreia believed that the Exile is the key. She is even more correct than she could ever know.
If enough of these echoes are allowed to build in the Force uncontrolled, the consequences could be disastrous. The connections of all life would be affected. Screams and their echoes can overlap, build in strength, and if timed correctly they will build on each other. The scream will grow, and anything that can hear this scream shall be deafened or killed. And controlling it, well, I do not believe such a thing is possible once it has begun. But in order for this to work, all of them must be timed correctly, must be carefully orchestrated and controlled, from the greatest to the smallest of echoes, even the ones that come from a lone exile echoing across the galaxy. And when that exile forms connections to others as you do, the danger becomes apparent, the echo continues to grow, to travel.
Once someone is deafened to the Force, will they suddenly drop dead? Very few will. If there's anyone similar to Darth Sion and is wholly dependent on the Force to keep them alive, they will die. Force sensitives and especially Force users are in particular danger. Force users may refuse to let go, like the Jedi Council. Some will be like the Exile, but it'll mostly be untrained Force sensitives who will be more receptive to letting go.
Deafened or killed.
But that's when the real danger begins.
Take the greatest Jedi Knight, strip away the Force, and what remains? They rely on it, depend on it more than they know. Watch as one tries to hold a blaster, as they try to hold a lightsaber, and you will see nothing more than a woman, or a man, a child.
Species that rely on the Force in some capacity will struggle greatly, and perhaps completely die out. The Miraluka, for example, will gradually lose their sight until the entire race is completely blind. The vast majority of the galaxy are not Force sensitive, and they probably wouldn't even realize it when they're cut off. But they're still in danger. In a previous episode of Kreia's Conundrums, I spoke about the void we all feel inside. People in the Star Wars universe are no different. The Force used to fill their void. Not anymore.
It would simply be empty, a wound.
They won't have to contend with the loss of Force powers, but everyone is going to have to adapt to this new reality. Everyone would need to find the will to live and purpose in life for themselves.
If she survives, she will become stronger for it.
It'll be chaos, but the Exile can be a shining savior of life or the dark embodiment of despair. Like Kreia said, a lone exile echoing across the galaxy, forming connections with people, followed by the exponential growth of the people the exile bonded with, influencing the people they come into contact with, and they influencing the next people they interact with, and so on. This is where I think the light side and dark side choices from the exile really matter in Kreia's plan. If your exile echoed throughout the galaxy, spreading hope, I imagine that people would be more inclined to keep living, more inclined to take on this challenge, to fill this void, to find a reason to live. But if your exile echoed pain and despair throughout the galaxy, I doubt many would be able to justify their continued existence, and your companions will hunt down whoever's left.
You have taught them to bond with others, and then feed on others through that bond. What you have brought is the death of all who can feel the Force. It is your gift to the galaxy, Exile. And unless you hear it and silence the echo you have caused, then every living thing everywhere that is touched by the Force will die.
You might be thinking, is any of this worth it? How can Kreia or anyone see this as being worth doing? In a galaxy of untold trillions of lives, the death toll could easily end up in the high billions or more. Well, what happens when we try to look at this from Kreia's perspective? There's this force that has a will and influences every single living thing in the galaxy. That influence equates to subtle yet full control. It always gets what it wants in the end. Over the course of all galactic history, this force's influence has resulted in endless war. Oftentimes, it's seemingly pointless, meaningless war ending with little to no progress. No lessons are learned to avoid these wars, or the lessons don't matter. Everyone carries on to the next one.
The Jedi, the Sith, you don't get it, do you? To the galaxy, they're the same thing. Just men and women with too much power, squabbling over religion while the rest of us burn.
How many quadrillions of lives would it amount to over the course of the galaxy's history? Maybe it's even beyond that, but no one is bothered, except for Kreia, who came up with a plan to remove this manipulative force once and for all. But this process could result in the deaths of upwards of 50% of the population.
If you're not willing to risk your conscience, then surrender and be done with it.
Everyone loses their minds. They call her crazy. They say there's no reason to do that. Everything is fine. The Force is a perfectly benevolent, loving being that wants nothing more than balance, whatever that means. Everything bad that could ever possibly happen can only ever be the fault of sentient beings. That makes sense, considering that Kreia is a person and not a near omnipotent and omniscient being. There's also a perceived gradualism with the latter. Kreia is perceived as the radical, presenting a sudden and irreversible change. Despite how many deaths can be directly attributed to the Force, it's okay, since it happened little by little over a long period of time. It doesn't matter if the body count is higher than Kreia could ever possibly reach.
The Empire has been choking us so slowly we're starting not to notice.
It can be almost anything, even if that thing is horrific. If it's drip-fed to people, they'll get used to it. But if it happens all at once, or in this case, they think it'll happen all at once, that's what gets all their focus.
The chains represent our restrictions, both those placed upon us and those we place upon ourselves. Ultimately, the goal of any Sith is to free herself from such restrictions. In a way, it is so we may do whatever we wish, but it is much more than that. One who has freed themselves from all restrictions has reached perfection, their potential fulfilled. Perfect strength, perfect power, perfect destiny. Imagine it.
In a way, I could argue that Kreia was the logical evolution of the Sith, perhaps even the true Sith'ari.
The legends say the Sith'ari will destroy us and make us stronger than ever.
If deafened to the Force, the Sith would certainly be destroyed, but they will be stronger because all that's left is true strength.
And know that that is the true lesson of strength, to turn away from strength that is not your own.
The Sith preach for freedom, even if it means surrendering to power. Kreia's ultimate goal is true freedom, even if it means having to give up power.